Let's talk some Ohio State recruiting because the Buckeyes, they have the number one class in America heading into the start of the season. In this video, we're going to find out what major needs are still left to address. Also, after missing on David Sanders, what's next for Ohio State at the offensive line? Ohio State fans, make sure you're locked in. Hit subscribe to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right. Let's bring in Matt Parker from Letterman Row. Like I said, Ohio State, number one class in the country right now, but there's still a few needs out there. Let's start at wide receiver because Phillip Bell, four-star wide receiver out of Cali, is now trending to Ohio State, but it hasn't always been that way. When did Ohio State jump into the lead here?
Well, Josh, you really saw Ohio State kind of get into that pole position, if you will. After his official visit in June to Ohio State, you saw Steve Fong and Chad Simmons put in a couple of picks on the Buckeyes. And then there was some talk about, USC is going to enter in the picture. Washington was in the picture as well. But these last couple of weeks, Ohio State has really come on strong and just has made the point of come here, get developed. You'll be, we'll make you into an NFL wide receiver like we've done with however many guys you really want to name off, quite honestly, that are playing in the NFL. And so Phillip Bell is set to announce August 31st. That's the same day as week one for many, many programs, Ohio State included. They'll host Akron at 3:30 on that Saturday. And I'm expecting Ohio State to receive some good news after they pick up their first win of the season.
All right, let's talk a little bit more at the wide receiver position. Jerome Miles back on the board. He's been talked about wide receiver. He's out of Utah. How big of a priority is he for Ohio State and Brian Hartline?
I mean, he's a big enough priority, Josh, where Ohio State really late to the picture, quite honestly. I know they've liked his tape for a while now, but they never extended the offer until this summer. Now that that has happened, the biggest thing is to get Miles, who I believe is a top 50 prospect, is to get him onto campus for an official visit at some point. The tricky part about that is that he's all the way out in Utah. That's not exactly close to Ohio State. And he already has a commitment date set for October 30th. Mm-hmm. So there's very limited time, quite honestly, to get Miles to campus for an official visit. It's going to have to be a night game for some kind of official visit. And right now, the only night game that's on the Ohio State schedule before that October 30th commitment date is week 2 against Western Michigan. And I don't exactly think Ohio State wants to bring in a big-time wide receiver, a very polished wide receiver, in for a game where if Ohio State takes care of business, that game's going to be over in the first half. So you have, an appetizing, Iowa is before October 30th at home. That could be a night game. You have Nebraska at home, which is, again, before October 30th, I believe. That might also be a night game. So really, it's kind of just seeing how the schedule works out, how the TV times work out for Ohio State to get that official visit, because they definitely want and need to get him onto campus before he makes a decision. However, I know the RPM is very, very heavy on Utah right now. And Ohio State, I mean, they're in his final group of schools. We're just going to have to see when that official visit happens and what goes from there.
All right. Any other wide receivers on the board that Ohio State fans need to keep an eye on?
Yeah, if I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm going to keep my eye on a local guy, 3-star Pickerington North wide receiver Preston Bowman. That's a guy that many Ohio State fans that are really in the nitty gritty of recruiting, as hopefully everyone is watching this show. That's a guy that Ohio State has, kept at arm's length for so long. He's an in-state guy. Pick North is a bit of a pipeline for Ohio State. The whole Pickerington School District is really a pipeline for Ohio State. He's committed to Kentucky right now, but he did earn his offer he earned his Ohio State offer a few days after he committed to Kentucky, and then he camped at Ohio State more than a few times. So the Buckeyes know exactly what they would get with a guy like Bowman, who, once again, he would be a guy that needs, 2-3 years to really develop into what Ohio State thinks he could be. But that's a guy Ohio State fans should certainly keep their eye on.
All right. Ohio State has had a lot of, and we're going to talk about David Sanders here in a second, but Ohio State has had a lot of success so far going into the state of Alabama and pulling top talent, whether it be Naeem Alford or Zion Grady. Zion Grady's an edge out of Alabama, but they're now working to flip four-star defensive lineman Malik Audy from Auburn. And at the same time, though, Auburn is working to flip Zion Grady from Ohio State. Do you think there's a good chance that these two will be playing together on the next level? And will it be Ohio State or will it be at Auburn?
Well, I know I feel pretty good saying that Zion Grady is pretty locked in with Ohio State. Just talking with some people at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center this past week as Ohio State exits training camp, gets into regular season mode. Ohio State feels good where it sits with Zion Grady as it goes into the season. Now, the Malik Audy situation is pretty interesting. Ohio State hosted him for an unofficial visit in May. They got him back on campus for an official visit that final weekend in June. And now he is slated to visit Ohio State for the Michigan game on November 30th. Mm-hmm. And with the signing day, the early signing period starting December 4th, if Ohio State manages to get Malik Audy on campus for that Michigan game on November 30th, and then signing day is just a few days later.
Yeah.
It'd be very interesting for Ohio State, who already has 3 defensive tackles in its class. And they want more. Ohio State wants more defensive tackles. That's very well known. They have room for 4. I think we're going to get into some Jaem Stewart conversation, who could pretty much play anywhere on the defensive line. And but Malik Audy is certainly a guy that Ohio State's been working on for a while now. He loves Larry Johnson, Buckeyes defensive line coach, has a great relationship with head coach Ryan Day. So I'm really looking to see if Audy makes it to Ohio State for that November 30th date against Michigan. Things could be really interesting for the Buckeyes.
All right, so let's talk David Sanders. Ohio State over the weekend, they needed an offensive lineman. He wasn't named David Sanders, but they did pick up a stud in Javon McFadden. He committed to the Buckeyes just yesterday. So what's your take on Ohio State offensive line recruiting, even with the miss of David Sanders Jr.? Is there a plan to replace him? Are they in a good spot right now? What's your take on offensive line?
Well, there is no way to replace a guy like David Sanders Jr., who's the number 1 offensive tackle in the On3 industry rankings. He's been a top 5 prospect his entire recruiting profile. There is no way that you can replace a talent that special. But as you mentioned, Ohio State picks up the 4-star. He's listed as an interior offensive lineman, Javon McFadden, out of Washington, D.C., Riverdale Baptist. He really projects as more of a guard, but he has that ability to be a swing tackle. What's helping Ohio State right now is that it has Carter Lowe in its class, the high 4-star out of Toledo Whitmer, who certainly projects as, at the very worst, a right tackle, not that kind of left tackle blindside guy that Ohio State fans have been clamoring for. But the state of offensive line recruiting is very interesting for Ohio State, because I think a lot of Ohio State fans felt like once David Sanders Jr. announced his decision to Tennessee last Saturday, it was just, well, now what? Now what? We have nowhere to go. Every single guy that we have offered is elsewhere, or is not interested in Ohio State. And Justin Fry, actually, Ohio State offensive line coach, spoke with the media this past week and got a lot of questions about recruiting. One of the things that he mentioned was it's a long way to December. And I think Ohio State fans will remember in that 2024 cycle, Ohio State essentially flipped top 150 prospect Gabe Van Sickle, who was committed to Northwestern. Northwestern certainly has a good pedigree of sending offensive linemen to the NFL, so to get that top 150 guy. I wrote a couple weeks ago, once Sanders committed to Tennessee, a bunch of guys to just keep an eye out on. And for me, one name that I am really just looking at with a lot of intrigue is Micah DeBose, committed to Alabama right now. I think Micah DeBose, who lives in Alabama, plays high school ball in Alabama, has been committed to Alabama since June, has Ohio roots. He has family in Cleveland, Ohio, that he understands what the program means. He knows everything that it would mean to be a Buckeye. And that's just a name that I think I would keep an eye out on if I'm an Ohio State fan.
And he's no stranger to change. I mean, Micah DeBose was early on committed to Georgia. He came off that commitment. It looked like it was going to be Auburn. Then it looked like it was all LSU. In the end, it was Alabama. But Micah DeBose has a history of looking around even when he's committed. So we'll keep an eye on that. Good name there. I can't let you go without talking Jaem Stewart. We followed him all off season, and those rumors were swirling that the number one player in the 2026 class, he's On3's number one player. He's number 4 in the industry. On3 has him a bit higher. But there was rumors all summer that maybe he's going to reclassify and become 2025. Well, season's here. Doesn't feel like he's going to reclassify. You can never actually put that to bed. But Jaem Stewart, let's just call him a 2026 recruit. And here's the interesting part. He has said he's kind of might make a decision this fall. So even though he's 2026, On3's number one player in the 26 class is going to probably make a decision this fall. Is it looking like an LSU-Ohio State battle? And who do you think the favorite is right now?
I would certainly say it's an LSU-Ohio State battle right now. If he made a decision right now today, I would say that he's staying home. He's going to be an LSU Tiger. But the separation between LSU and Ohio State is not as big as a lot of people, not as big as a lot of people may think. Ohio State is right there. They are a very, very solid number 2 right now for Jaem Stewart. He has a great relationship with a bunch of people at Ohio State, especially defensive line coach Larry Johnson, Ryan Day. But the one big relationship there in that recruitment for Ohio State is with assistant defensive line coach Alan Clark, who's from Louisiana, has that pull in Louisiana. Ohio State has a couple other staff members on its recruiting department that are from Louisiana, including Sam Petito, who Ohio State hired away from Alabama, and Kalen DeBoer, which that's a massive hire that I feel like that's not been talked about enough. That's why Ohio State has such strong position in some 2026 recruitments in Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama. But Jaem Stewart, much like Malik Audy, is slated to visit Ohio State November 30th for that Michigan game. And if that visit happens, whether he's committed or not, I think seeing what Ohio State is like on a game day, especially for the game, that can open up a lot of eyes for him and in his camp. So once again, Josh, it's just a situation that we're going to have to keep an eye out on. But I definitely like Ohio State as it sits right now. Just they're in a good spot. I think LSU would win that recruitment if it ended today. But if he's taking his decision into the fall, that's what he's looking to do. The fall is 3 months long if you really want to look at it. So the fall could be September, it could be November. We don't know when that specific time frame would be. So again, just circle that November 30th date on the calendar for Ohio State with recruits, because that's going to be a very, very big day for 2025s, 2026s, and even some early 2027s.
All right, Ohio State fans, you heard it. There's still some needs to fill before this 25 class is over. Talk to us. Let us know. Comment section below how we feeling about Ohio State's number 1 class, and do they finish at the top? Let us know. Comment section below. Well, you've made it to the end of today's video, but there's hundreds more videos on the On3 Recruits channel for you to check out. And also, while you're here, hit subscribe.